Welcome in, everyone. Today we have a new episode as a part of the 5B1C series where we are back focused on our beach town that we built back in May. If you remember, we set up a little vacation spot for some of the locals, and it needed some more work, but we sort of ran out of time for that episode. So I'm revisiting, revamping, and making some drastic changes to certain areas of the space, including the area around where our town is. Now, some of the comments you guys made in the previous videos, I've been able to address in this video. So if you are new, be sure to hit the subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment for any suggestions or comments you have, and come follow us at twitch.tv/slate3k, where you can catch us hanging out with the community and playing some games. All right, so some things I want to focus on in a little more detail are trying to get the marsh set up so that it fits more of what I'm hoping would be a finished marsh. There's been some assets added to our inventory, and I think I'm going to throw some of those in to kind of beef this up and make it a little bit more complete. With that said, I know an area I didn't really focus on as much as this kind of creek bed here that runs along this side. So this needs plenty of detail work and some attention. So we're going to try to address those in this episode. Next up, something that was talked about in the comments, and I think on my video, the last time we were focused on this area, was the interchange not really fitting the town it feeds into. Keep in mind, this is meant to be a very small town, sort of an escape for a lot of the locals to go and hang out over the summer. So I don't want to expand this area or make it much larger than it is. I feel like we're pretty much set up here. But the interchange itself doesn't really fit. So I want to do something really, really simple, something very clean that is going to be more low capacity and less ornate. With that said, you guys also made some comments about having the marsh come closer to the highway to give it purpose for it being elevated. And I think we're going to stick with that. And the basic interchange idea I have wouldn't really cause an issue there. So I'm probably going to expand the marsh a little bit closer to here. And I want to add a little bit of a path or something this way for maybe a house or two over here on the marsh for a few locals to hang out. Finally, I think we need to move some of our service stuff somewhere in here, maybe like a small industrial park or just at least the landfill and incinerator just off the highway. So we have a little bit of infrastructure work to do. And obviously we set up a lot of our town in the last episode. So I don't know how much we're going to do with regards to like developing this area. We may do a little bit, but we'll kind of see how much time we have once we get into kind of getting the marsh and some of the surrounding area to where I want it to be. So since the last time I recorded, there's been some assets and things added that I think we can use in this area. So first and foremost, I want to try to get it a little bit closer to the highway. So if the marsh is coming somewhere up into this area, that'd be ideal. And then I want like a rural road running alongside the highway. So I guess let's get to it, right? We're going to go ahead and remove some trees so you can see a little bit of the palette area here that we're going to be working on and start to reshape how the terrain is next to the marsh. I've got it on pause for now. This is going to react kind of poorly because I'm going to be adjusting a space with water. And if you've done any of that, you guys know how it is. So I'm going to go ahead with a height that should be submerged. And I realize like there's kind of a pretty significant height change between where the highway is in terms of the land underneath it, really, and where the base of the marsh is going to be. So I'm going to smooth this out. And what we may need to do is a couple of tiers where we can sort of make it feel a little bit organic. I don't want it to come across like it's man-made at all. Instead, I kind of want it to seem like the road that runs along here and everything is reacting to the terrain that pre-exists the highway. So, all right, now let's see if we speed this up. Let's let water start coming in and see where it lands. We may have to lower it a little bit more, and it does look like that to get it closer. Looks a little flat here, so we'll deal with that in a minute. I'm going to have it come into there a little bit more. And then let's give us just enough of a path. In fact, maybe what we do to help out the terrain here is have some of the hill underneath the highway. And so we still have a little bit of a drop off. We can play with this a little bit too once we have the road in. I just don't want it to, be a bridge all the way over here. I want it running along the very edge as much as possible. Let's see if we can smooth some of this out a little bit. Well, that's something. Now, if you remember last time, we were using ore texture to create kind of a sandy dirt mix. So I'm going to use that for the coastline here. And then we were using the ruin texture to have almost like an algae base to the water. And then I'm going to take the ore and I'm going to kind of lighten it up here so it blends a little better. Just so you don't have that harsh line, man. Okay. Now let me go ahead and draw a road to see what that's going to look like when it's tucked into this area. I want it to run just along the highway. It doesn't really need to match the angle perfectly. I'm going to have to figure out exactly where to connect that. So that angle there may change. And I'm going to have it run this way. So let's go ahead and remove just a few trees through here. That doesn't look too shabby. Okay. Now, I believe I saved... Oh, I did. Yes. Okay. See what that starts to look like as we fill it in a little bit. And then we're going to go for a more narrow brush and try to fill up a little bit of this. Cool. We may have to do almost individual trees to get it closer to the highways, like place some trees between the road and the highway. Let's see how that works out. It may not go quite to plan. Oh, we might be able to do it. Just want some separation there. Well, these are getting kind of close. So let's try to get some smaller ones in if we can. Yeah. So now we have this little rural road running back here. We can put a couple houses maybe in this area if we want. So now we have this space. I'm going to leave this as is until we figure out how the highway is going to work. So you can see we're starting to set up the new marsh and where it's going to hit. And I feel like this is much closer. I do wonder if the terrain needs to be lowered or how we can adjust that. You know what we could do? Wonder what this would be like if we took a little chunk of it. So I'm going to take out a bit of the road and just have it kind of come this way. And obviously we're going kind of uphill, so I don't want to go too far because I don't want to get crazy cliffs. But if we make it so that some water is transitioning underneath the highway, I feel like that's going to continue to give it more purpose. And then we'll need to do a bridge. Now we have a little covered bridge here. That's kind of neat. Okay. Let's see how that lands. So it kind of looks like they had to choose. Or like, do we do the highway here or do we cut into the mountain? Maybe here's a little bit, you know, less costly to do, but try to give purpose behind some of the things we make. Okay. Now I'm going to take away a little bit of that, bring some of that green back. Looks nice and smooth. That doesn't look too bad. I almost want to, something I tend to do with like bridges is I try to make them like straight angles like that. I just feel like it tends to look more appropriate. That's kind of a long wooden bridge, but it might be okay. All right, so we're going to go here and see if we can get this to that angle to look a little bit better. Okay. All right, that's kind of nice. I could totally see a bunch of farms. Like if we had a bunch of land here that didn't get eaten up by the marsh, I could see some farms like tucked in underneath the mountains here. That looks nice and smooth. Doesn't stand out too bad. I think we need to add some rock back here to make this blend in a little better. We just have some dead space, and I want to make sure that this looks like it's leading up to the mountain. Although this angle here to me is like a little steep. I don't know how much I want to do to like correct that necessarily. Like sometimes I feel like I'm able to make these look a little bit more natural, and sometimes I'm just like, oh man, maybe we just need to leave it. Kudos to folks that make maps. There's some that are just so well done at creating mountains. It can be very, very hard to do a version of that once you're into like the city, it seems like, at least for me. I don't know if you guys have the same issue where making like mountains can be a little bit challenging. I feel like this is going to kind of look like the base of it is more natural, but the upper portion, and kind of smooth it out a little bit so it's not so intense of a cliff here. And it feels maybe a little more organic. And then what I want to do here is take some more trees. And I think I'm going to switch to, maybe it's Maine that I was using in the last episode for our neighborhood. By the way, if you guys didn't check out the neighborhood episode, we built a neighborhood on top of a little peninsula cliff area closer to the downtown area. That came out pretty neat. Just a cool little spot. Yeah, so that might cover up some of the awkwardness of that. Let's get a couple more. Hey, that makes it blend in a little better, in my opinion. Very neat. And now I think closer to the water, we switch back to my marsh mix here. And kind of fill it in that way, maybe. And we blend that in with the main mix. I don't know. I think I brought up some hesitations in the last time we were working on this area with the mix I made for the marsh. Like some of the trees maybe not blending the way I want. It's growing on me sometimes, and sometimes I'm just not super into it. Probably overthinking it. I was just looking for like a different tree that felt more like it belonged in an area like this. Okay. So I found some of these assets that have been brought in since I worked on the marsh. Like some rocks and things like that might be nice in here. I could almost see this being like there's some coastline rocks available in the workshop that I sometimes use to make it look a little bit more man-made, like they were put in there to like help with eroding. The great thing about this collection of rocks, though, is you can reuse it a bunch, and it usually doesn't look to reuse just by doing a simple rotation, throwing it in. It's kind of nice, right? It's a little treacherous. Not too bad. So now we have purpose for this, and I hope I'm not going to mess anything up when I start working on the update to the highway. A lot of what I want infrastructure-wise is here, so I think I want to go and start doing this before we get too far here in case we have to change anything. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it. Bear with me because interchanges aren't really my specialty. So essentially what I want to do is I want to remove this loop, and we're going to do something that basically runs directly into the road and keep it, again, very simple and clean. I think having all these options is kind of unnecessary for the amount of traffic they would expect here. And we just need to keep the highway traffic just moving. So we're going to cut down on the amount of roads and pathing placed. And then what I may have it do is also bend this way to fit the current structure without having to do a ton of work to the area. And what this would also do is it would probably have us just make a 4-lane road that runs underneath here. So we'll go ahead and put it here and see how this lands for us. Do I want it here? Right about here might be good. Okay. Let's go ahead and get that to there. Ooh. All right. Now let's see if we can kind of get this aligned a little bit better. There's a ton of these interchanges, and I know they're probably not the most efficient interchange, but there's a ton of these where I live because we have a pretty extensive highway system. And I started doing it because it looked realistic, as in it probably wasn't ideal. As in it probably wasn't very well planned, especially for like high capacity areas. So we're going to use that for better or worse for this space. See, this actually meets the ground, so I don't know if we really have to do a lot here other than just bring it to that same point, like so. And then we need to flip it. And I want to see if the slope is what we want or if it's going to make an adjustment. Yeah, it's going to tweak it a little bit. Let's do this side again and see if we can clean up some of the bumpiness of it. Yeah. Now, normally what I'd probably do too, if I had, you know, the crazy list of assets that I often maintain, would be putting concrete under here. Just to fill in that dead space. I'm not sure if I have the assets to do it. Now, I will say sometimes the problem with this is if it does get pretty high capacity, you have a lot of, you have a few, not a lot, of intersections happening in a small area. So this can be a little bit of a problem, but we'll see how it works out. If it's an issue, we'll readdress. All right, now let's go ahead and get our nodes. We have like an extra node there we don't really need. Okay, so something like that to me looks significantly like simplified and more appropriate for the area. It doesn't look like they spent a lot of time, energy, and monies creating this. So for better or worse, that's what we're looking for. Let's see if there's a road maybe we should use. I'm kind of curious if there's something that might fit this a little bit better. I'm not quite the road magician that some others are, so a lot of times I'm always like learning and trying to figure out how to apply some new tricks as I find them out. Like it'd be kind of cool to have like an exit lane or something like that attached to this, but not seeing anything. I don't really want a median. I'd almost rather a turn lane, but I don't see an option with a turn lane, do I? Maybe we go the avenue route like that. Then that pillar makes a little more sense. Need to clear out some trees because I don't know if you guys have this issue, but like when there's a bunch of trees in the area that aren't getting deleted because, you know, mods or whatever is like anarchy and stuff like that is preventing it. Get hard to see things. That's why I'm always deleting trees. In case you were wondering. All right, so I went in off camera real quick and just made some tweaks to this to kind of clean up some of the nodes. I was having an issue. There was like a node really, really close to right here. This node, they were kind of stacked and it was creating like a little cliff on the pathing. So I went ahead and tried to straighten that out a little bit and just made some general adjustments to the slope to try to clean it up some. So now it's looking a little more uniform. It could use some more polish, but we're going to keep it moving just for the, to kind of continue the video and not get hung up on some of the details. So one thing we got to decide is if we want to kind of have this road come out or how we want to do this. And that is something I'm not 100% certain of. We are now using one road, so we don't really need the split like we had it. So I'm sort of wondering if we have this kind of curve back into it and see what that looks like. Obviously, that doesn't look super ideal, does it? I wonder how we can make this look a little bit cleaner here without creating a whole new mess to contend with. I'm wondering if we just need to kind of lengthen how we handle the approach and just have it go in like that and then straighten out a piece for the bridge. So I'm going to take the current bridge out and we're going to readdress this. And then we'll just make some tweaks using Move It to make it work a little bit better for our purpose here. So I really want this to be straight into the city like that. And we're just sort of making it worse. Oh, man. We might be getting there. Let's see if we can clean up a little bit of this curve here. It doesn't help that we have stuff just sort of running into it, does it? Now we do have the height change happening. That doesn't look too bad. I just wanted to have purpose for why it's doing this bend, besides we just needed to like adjust it, you know? So I'm giving it a nice little curve into the city, the town. I think I want these roads just to go ahead and match if this is how we're going to set it up. Now what I'm wondering is if we adjust this angle here and we have that run into this intersection right there, or what will be an intersection. Okay. Actually really like that road for some reason. I wonder if we could do a little bit of, yeah, something like that maybe before it goes into being, you know, more rural. Now this becomes an area where it's like, do we put like a motel or something like that? Like what can go here? I'm gonna leave that open for now. Gas station before you start heading into town. I also want to see what it looks like to maybe have a little bit of the road. So that's it transitioning from being the avenue into just a 4-lane road. The Move It's telling me that's probably the angle we need to go to, but okay. I don't know. I think if we give this some purpose or something like that, we might be in good shape. We're getting there. We're figuring it out. And then I also want to have access to be able to put some of this service stuff like I mentioned earlier and tuck it in maybe right over here beside the highway. I think those are some potential options for making this feel a little bit more planned out. I don't know what to do here. Like, do we carve into it some? Like, sorry guys, this is just kind of the process. Sometimes it's just experimenting until we find something that feels organic and I kind of use the word purposeful often, and that's mainly because, you know, you have stuff that just you do by accident, but you don't really necessarily need it to look like it's just an accident. Let's see what happens when we start fiddling with this space a little bit more. All right, so we've kind of carved out another little island. That seems a little bit repetitive, but maybe not too bad. This looks a little flat. Oh, you know what? Now let's grab some of the rocks we have here. And one helpful thing is to make a palette that you can pull from. Looks a little bit repetitive. If you put out some of the assets you plan on using, it can be a really efficient way of speeding up your build. So like I have a few items that I intend to use in this area, right? Pretty close to where I'm building so that I can see it, grab it, and I can keep moving. Starting to lose some daylight. There we go. This may be a little overkill on the rock, but let's shape it up and let's slow this down a bit. Just wanted to make sure I get traffic back in here before we have any other issues. So kind of stain the ground some. It looks like we've got a little bit of that in here. It's the wrong one. Do not want concrete in the water. All right, now let's take out some of this so it blends in a little bit better. Ooh. Okay. I still feel like the rocks may be a little much. So what if we take out a couple of these? This little like lip on the edge of the terrain here is a little more maybe intense than we need it to be. So let's pull out marsh. Hey, it's coming along. We're getting somewhere here. Looks kind of nice, actually. I think it's coming together. Now we just need like a couple businesses or something to sit right off the highway up here. But let's go ahead and start transitioning this into our kind of river area here. Looks like we still have some of the grass surface painter down, so I'm going to take some of that out so we can see it a little more clearly. I just really want that in the water. I don't think we need it in spaces where it's just meant to be sand or just dry terrain. I think this also will help a little bit too with how we're placed sort of in the mountains here. So we're starting to kind of make it difficult. This is such a narrow area that the surface painter and the ore are kind of fighting each other over supremacy. Yeah, I think we can work with this. Double click there. Now you have a nice little like view as you're coming in. Let's go ahead and utilize this since it's here. Don't need it coming out of the road, do we? Or underneath the bridge into the road. Make it look like the trees are growing in between some of the rocks. Give it a little more vegetation. Wow, that really sets that up nicely. Okay, let's continue down this way. I want to get this done. So we have, so far we've got a road planted here. We've redone what the why the highway is elevated, and we've added a new interchange in, which seems to be flowing okay. We have a little bit of buildup here. It's not too bad. I'm going to keep an eye on that because I know it's probably not the most efficient, but it is like a subtle way of handling this. And it's something I see when I'm driving through town a little bit too often. I know some folks will say we do a roundabout or something along those lines or a massive interchange, but I just don't think that fits what we're looking for. So I'm trying to find an alternative that is almost poorly planned intentionally. Add a little realism to it, right? All right, I'm going to get rid of some of the surface painter I did on the coastline here, so we can start to make this look a little bit further along. So we need to take ore and essentially just start giving the ground at the coastline a little bit of color, but we have to be careful. Do you see that hard line that's showing up when we're doing this? So I'm trying to balance. I don't want it to be over the top like it is right there. So we may have to just keep going further inland and then kind of getting rid of it just to make it work. Then we have some tall grass and stuff we can use to hopefully blend it all together. And I'm almost tempted to have areas where it's just like, it's just kind of sandy. Let me see what sand might do here. I know we played with this a bunch last time. If we can get it to... Yeah, sand looks a little bit too rocky for my taste. And then let's subtract a little bit of that. Now try to get these to play nicely with each other. You see how easy it is to overdo it. It's kind of, that's probably the one downside of using ore versus just a decal or a surface painter, is you're just going to kind of run into some of these little issues or difficulties in trying to blend them together because they just don't naturally play nice. And again, I mean, decals may help with that a lot. Like if you start putting some of those in over the edges. So I'm going to use, like, for right now, I'm going to use some rocks. I need the smaller kind of rock. There we go. Just using a couple of these. I also want to demonstrate that you don't need a ton to do a lot in terms of detailing and making some of these areas look pretty nice. Let's up the density a little bit, and it's got the power line there, so it doesn't really want to play with that. All right, now something we could also try too is making like a little bit of a cliff edge here, because we do have a pretty sizable change in height. So I'm going to take out some trees that I've placed there, and we're going to do a little bit of this and see if we can create like a little cliff edge in a spot, just so that the height and how things are shaped are a little bit different and, you know, dynamic. I don't want it to seem smooth either. So let's embrace a little bit of that terrain change. Doesn't really do a ton, but maybe it'll look like something. All right, so we're gonna up some of the density in a couple spots just to do some filler trees. And make it look almost a little overgrown. I think that's starting to look better. Something I want to do too is what I'm just seeing in some spaces is just how like certain areas of the trees just look significantly more dense. And I want it to blend into each other a little bit better. Like we have these little houses here. Help me out, trees. I still don't know whether utilizing this tree was a good decision. It may just be too off-putting. Like it may be setting up an area that just doesn't blend in with some of the other stuff I've done. You know, like I'm trying to make it almost like native to the marsh, and maybe that's not the play that we need to be like super focused on. Put these right up in the water just to cover up some of the harsher edges of like where the ore is meeting surface painter. Right in here where the grass doesn't quite cover it, especially when you zoom out. All right, now let's grab a little bit of the grass, and we're going to kind of fill in some spaces that are sort of blank. We need to add some trees down here, but for now. You can see with the rocks, we have a little bit of diversity. It's a little bit more interesting now. That's nice. And I still want to kind of move this over here somewhere. I'm tempted to build off of here and do it this way, but then again, like we have some space to fill in. I don't know. I don't know what the best option is just yet. But let's try to stay focused, which is mainly on me. You guys are doing great. We could have the mountain kind of come down like I did here and spread it out a little bit and throw some trees on it just to make it look a little bit less steep there. Let's try that. Let's see if we can incorporate some of that into this space a little bit. This may not work, so we may undo it, but might as well give it a try here. Scaling of mountains is just quite difficult to get it to look very natural. We want main. And then we're just going to kind of throw some trees in and make it just look kind of foresty. And I'm really going to just put trees in areas that are green, like where it's just grass. So if you come down here and you start looking, it looks like, you know, there's some elevation. Like that looks nice. That looks a little bit less intense. Well, maybe a little more natural. Okay. So let's work on the exit area here for the water, and then we'll start probably getting some of that industrial stuff shifted around. I'm gonna put some tall grass in. Like maybe it's been added to help with erosion. And let's try to keep it out of the bridge. Now let's take a few of these guys and scatter them in here along the coastline. Again, covering up some of the change in textures and stuff like that. I don't know if I really want to put any of that big rock collection thing we were using. So something I want to try also to blend this in a little bit is to take a few of these trees and place them into here. I want the trees to feel like they belong, and right now they're just they just feel like they're a little bit lost. Let me see. Just trying to get a variety of sizes in and just a few. And again, you guys can sort of be the judge of if the trees really match or blend together. Some people may not mind it. Some people may be a little bit more like interested in seeing something that, you know, kind of blends together with like what else is on the build so far. Because we've been using a lot of kind of like one or two sets of trees, I think. Just doing that, I feel like it already feels less isolated to a specific area. It's very, very dense here. I just want to make sure it all sort of blends together better. And I know I keep saying that. It's like a reminder for me just to try to get it to look a little bit more appropriate. I think this part of the river, though, is looking much more complete. I do like just the little addition of some plants and some wildlife here. There's so many things we could do to it, probably. I mean, I really think like decals would add a lot. I just don't know how far I want to go down the rabbit hole of that. One thing I do want to also do is add some rocks out here and some tall grass just to get this to sort of match what we've just established in other areas. Even if it's just a little bit tucked in here and there, making some of these spaces just a little more cohesive. Yeah, see how that's sort of embedded, like it's just all overgrown? That is probably one of my favorite looks. I made a video not too long ago that covers like how I do some overground textures and stuff like that with plants and all. That is like one of the funnest maybe exercises in cities at times. It's just trying to make something appear overgrown and worn out. And I've talked about this before, but like a lot of times in game, what you're building doesn't look old or roughed up, right? Like everything is going to look pristine. So trying to make something look more worn out is a little bit of a challenge. Highly recommend it. Like if you start making things look like they've seen better days, buildings, you know, abandoned buildings, you could wear out the concrete in certain areas and industrial areas especially. You're going to get a really, really nice, set of diversity in whatever you're working on. It's really, really cool. It's a fun project. I used to do like little corners and stuff. Like I'd pick little areas to do it, just because it could get really intensive where just things were worn out or beat up. And that became a cool project. I mean, you can go as far as adding graffiti to things. It's like walls and stuff. Just the asset list that you can build off of that is pretty intense. But if you can afford to do it, it's a good time. Now, as you can see, doing some of the rocks, the grass, and working on the trees and some of the other details we've added, we made a pretty big improvement here. This looks really, really good, in my opinion, especially for playing with a limited amount of content added from the Steam Workshop. So if you're an individual that, tries to stay away from downloading a ton of stuff, I still think it's possible to detail and add some neat features to your map, especially in areas where you want to elevate and make those areas either seem more lifelike or just adding detail in general to make them stand out. I think you can do it with not a crazy amount of stuff, although the more stuff you have, the more options you have. All right, I made one more update, which was I tweaked the bridge a little bit. I gave it some ramps up to the main portion of the bridge, and I actually made it into one solid structure, so it wasn't broken up in half. That was just bugging me because it just didn't look quite right. So essentially, I just took out a segment, extended one segment of the bridge to the other side, and then added small segments here and on the other end to kind of look like ramps up to the bridge. So I think that looks a little bit better, and it's also not quite as long, and I think it fills the need a little bit more appropriately. But you can see how well all this has turned out around it. all the detailing we've added into this area. I put a few more rocks and some grass around the bridge as well. So let's get into a couple of things that I want to add. I'm not really sure what this should be over here other than maybe like a little neighborhood. I feel like this road obviously needs some purpose, and right now it just doesn't really have that. So we're going to play around with some ideas and see how it goes. I know we talked about moving our services over here. So I don't really want the landfill to be like the first thing you see is the only bummer. I don't know whether I want to put that back here maybe, even though I just said I was thinking about a neighborhood. There's not really much to develop here unless we just have like maybe an access road or just a couple things along this road. And then I want to put like a rural house or two in this area, I think, but we're not going to go too far in that direction. So let's see what we can do. We have water treatment facility, the incinerator, and the landfill are the services that are currently parked over here. So if I take this, it's a pretty sizable little structure, I guess. Maybe this just belongs in this portion of the town. So let me do, let's see here. Let me do maybe an industry road. What is that? I don't know if I need that much of one. Let's go down a size. Let's remove some trees. Oh, I kind of like that with some of the cliffs up here. Whoops, wrong button. There we go. And then with some trees, maybe that'll look pretty nice in this like little valley. All right. Let's go ahead and grab. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to delete the other one. Does this like really fit here? That's not ideal. Let's see if we can rotate that to here. Is that going to look pretty bad? Yeah, not as bad as I thought it would. We're going to delete this. I feel like that's taken care of. What I may do is also keep the trash facility over here next to it. So it sort of looks like it's all the same complex. The only issue with this is it's obviously going to add some traffic, unfortunately, into this whole double intersection area, which I'm sure some folks will argue against using in the first place, but we could obviously do something much more complex and maybe and definitely more efficient, but it doesn't look to be backing up that bad as long as the lights are working properly. We're really just adding some trucks so far, at least. All right, we can get rid of the incinerator here because I don't want to have two. Water treatment. Let's actually move that to the other side. I don't want to make this into a massive industrial park. I don't really like that idea either. Okay. And I'm going to get rid of that little structure there. Okay. So now we've got our services finally moved away from the waterfront or our little space here along the creek. Now we have like a little bit of like space here if we want to add some stuff. I don't know really what I want to put. So I'm thinking we do maybe a couple blocks of commercial right here. Just low density. Just a few things, not much. Now, if we shift back over here where I want to put something rural, let's go ahead and start expanding this while we wait on the zoning we just did to actually kind of build. And I wanted to place like a little house, maybe like right in here. Just a little secret spot, like a little, I don't know, almost like an Easter egg for our build. Something that we could easily expand and have a bunch of these along the coastline here. I don't know if I'll get that far today, but I wanted to take one of our little stilt houses. Maybe even like that one right there. And we're going to shift this up to the road. And I'm going to carve out a little spot here. I know you need power. Just hang tight. I don't know how many of you... I'm curious to know how many folks maybe have started playing without power lines entirely. I feel that I've started to do that pretty much on every build. Just because I feel like it gets a little bit, you know, kind of repetitive to have to like do all the power lines and all that stuff. And I tend to want it to be underground anyway. So I don't really place them as often. And then when I play this save, I tend to have to place them. And I sometimes forget to prepare for that in advance. I grabbed a couple of little assets that I thought would be fun to place here. So we're going to put this in. And I'm going to smooth some of that out back here. And then we're going to take... Let's see. I think I have like a little dock. Yeah. Hopefully this kind of covers what I'm looking for. Neat. And then I don't know if pathing is going to be a little awkward here, but we'll see. No, it might work. Attach it to the road. Now I do want to get rid of all that concrete under there. And then let's make that a little smaller. Yeah, it's kind of cute. I don't know. Something to hang out over here. Well, now let's grab some marsh. Okay. I'm also going to go ahead and see if I can add... Yeah, just make it a little brighter. Like it's maybe a little bit more sandy. And then I'm going to also, since this is like an asset that's functioning like a building, I'm going to bump that down a little bit. Cool. We're going to fill in around the house some. I don't want to go too far. It's kind of neat, right? A little rural house back here. Now I want to add a couple more now that I wasn't really planning on it. Just off this road. Let me get water and stuff like that connected, and we'll assess and see if we should add a couple more little spots. Let's see what's coming up on this road. I might move a couple of these a little bit closer because I think, yeah, so I want one of these buildings maybe on the corner, like right in here. That's actually, I love the coin laundry right at the corner. That's perfect. And then I'm going to go ahead and stack this little restaurant right next to it. The little IHOP looking building right there. And then we're going to shift this to the corner. Little convenience store. Let's see if we can fix the height, because you can see it's like dipping into the ground a little bit. There we go. Always come in here and try to fix stuff like that. Those little gaps tend to look a little goofy, so. If those can stay, that'll look fine. Let's go ahead and start the simulation again. Actually, no, that'll work. We'll just kind of fill in some of this back here some. I'm keeping this all very, again, pretty rural. I don't really want a lot of development in this area. That's not really what it's meant to be. And then you kind of can take this road. And I would imagine like folks over here might just have a few acres of land and stuff just that they have bought. And, you know, you could say like a lot of these guys have been here a while, or they bought the land at some point and they've just developed their own little spots, kind of tucked away a little neighborhood. I don't think I'm going to put a house there. Let's see where we can add another one or two. Maybe like right here might be a good one. I wasn't really going to do more, but I think it looks kind of cool to have these off the marsh. So we're going to do a couple more. Although I don't have like a bunch of assets that I can use for each one of them. And I don't want to add a ton of stuff to this save. So I'm just going to do a couple. Very, very simple. Let's pull up stilt houses. And that'll do. So shift this closer. As if it's like just their driveway here. And then we're going to go let's see if I can increase density a little bit just to make a little bit of an escape here from the road. And then let's add just like a little, maybe like a little walkway down. Let me go and put anarchy on. No collision. Cool. What? Maybe just a little bit of grass to add in here. It might be almost in the house. And just a little bit on this side. I don't know that I have any other dock assets. I don't think I saw anything. Check deck. Viewing deck. I don't think that's really gonna be what I'm quite looking for. But I can use this chair. Okay, now we just got to get power there. I'll do that in a second. Got a couple little buildings popping up on the other side now. Oh, another coin laundry. Well, I imagine that'll switch out at some point. We're just going to hope that it does. That's unfortunate. It's not the sort of diversity in buildings I was hoping for there. I'm sure we all see some of that though. This is why, like, I think pretty much every city I've worked on now for a while has been. I mean, I've done like one vanilla build besides this lately, but most of them are going to be all the buildings are hand placed, like all the commercial buildings. Usually with residential, I tend to zone because residential detailing can just really get to a point where you're running out of ideas, or it can get super drawn out because it can be a lot of stuff, especially when you're trying to make every building, every house diverse in its own way, you know, with different props and things. So I tend to try to find some sort of set of assets that I can use. You just have to be careful because it seems like some can cause a little bit of a performance issue because they're trying to make everything so diverse in terms of like how different each house looks, you know, like you're tacking on a lot of assets and things, so it's not always ideal. But if you can find a way to make it work, it's pretty great. You know, you can always use, like, for me, the American Eccentric pack is something that I often use, and I tend to, oddly enough, I place more of my residential much later in my build process, especially like low density. I'll do a lot of high density relatively early, but for the most part, my low density is like one of the last things I start building. I really prefer to focus on the higher density because I think once you start getting into a ton of houses placed, I feel like the frames just go out the window. I don't know if you guys have that experience or not, but that has been a lot of what I've dealt with in some of my builds that have made it like difficult for me to even complete builds because I've already put in so much work in the other aspects of the city that by the time I get to the residential portion, I'm just like, all right, the game, I have 10 frames. We must stop. So let's find another little still house here to put by the water. Yeah. Hope it flipped the wrong way. So let me do this. Let's go ahead and rotate. And then I'm actually going to move this node here. Kind of on a little hill. That's nice. We'll give them a little rowboat too. Maybe not on the cliff though. That might not be ideal. Let's give them a little path to the water. Maybe not that path. I don't think that was the move. All right, trying to get some other trees in here besides the marsh pack, just so it, you know, can look a little different. That looks neat. I've been to a lake and like you'd have these really pretty houses just around the lake that were often like really heavily covered up. Like you couldn't see houses, and it just seemed like people didn't really care about, you know, having folks see their houses as much as it was just like They wanted their privacy. So I don't think it's weird to even just kind of like, you know, tuck some of these little places away where you can't even see like where the house is really, or you can just see like, you know, enough of it to know where it is, but like you don't really get an impression of what the house looks like. Neat. So we've added these little spots over here, looking good. I almost want to do the same treatment where we expand this mountain a little bit to kind of like hug part of the town. So let's see what we can kind of come up with here. I'm wondering if we take about that height here and we just push it out this way. It's going to look absolutely chaotic right now. And then we're going to start smoothing it out into the mountain. So doing some of this gives justification, I feel like, to how I'm shaping up the roads. Like the roads are built around some of the terrain. And I tend to think like hugging roads like this and giving it that purpose or that sort of backstory helps make it seem like it's placed with reason, and it'll make certain things make sense. So if you feel like something's just not really resonating with like what you're doing, you know, like you've constructed something and you're sitting there and you're looking at it and it just feels out of place, or it feels like it's missing something. Sometimes giving it that purpose that I tend to talk about, giving it a backstory will, in my eyes, help out a bunch. Because I tend to think, you know, roads, I look at stuff too, like roads and certain buildings are going to be built, you know, often, you know, for as cheap as possible, or they're going to be built in a way that's like very efficient. So I think you have to keep some of that in mind. Like if there's a way to do it that makes sense, like, you know, you got to think, okay, when they were spending money here, do you think they're going to spend the most money, or were they going to try to find an efficient way to do it? And oftentimes they're trying to find an efficient way to do something. So it's like, all right, well, deleted too many trees. Let's take a look at the little houses on here. So now you have something in here that's sort of mixed into all this vegetation and wildlife. I think it was kind of neat. What I may do also is just go ahead and get rid of this piece here, and we'll leave it to that final little driveway. Obviously, we need to work on this curve, which may be kind of a two-part process. So let's take these roads out and let's do... Yeah, there we go. That's the last driveway on the block. Cool. And then I'm going to have the same kind of treatment here where we're going to extend this mountain a little bit. That may be way too much. Yeah, let's go back a little. I think I went a little bit too crazy here. I'm going to take it from like maybe here. There we go. That's probably what we need to do. And then we're going to smooth it out. Okay, so I think we can go a little bit further than that. And then we're going to grab like right in here and then smooth it out again. Okay. Let's grab some tree brush. Main. I guess I can unpause it even though it's going to want power and other things now that we've placed a few more houses. Very neat. I think this is looking really, really good. I would say that like if we get another opportunity to come back, maybe we develop in this area back here. I don't know that I want to extend this out anymore, do much else over here. That's not to say we wouldn't, but you know, maybe this is, you know, a couple more businesses or an office or two or something, and just keep it kind of rural. I might actually tweak how I've set this up to accommodate this a little bit more accurately versus just kind of a service road. I'm not really sure what to do with it. If you have, I guess, suggestions, throw it in the comments, but that's probably the one area that just isn't developed. I think what we're going to do before we wrap the episode, though, is maybe tuck in a few houses back here and then kind of connect this path with the road. And I'm thinking we just do that via a rural road because this is a path, correct? Yeah. And I almost just want to like remove that entirely. or to that point and just have a rural road running up to it. Which is like a nice scenic. Okay. Now let's make sure. There's no trees directly in the road, and okay. Now I'm going to do something that I talked about a little bit in, I think, the last episode. That is setting up just a little bit of a cul-de-sac here at the end. Okay. For a turnaround. Now, what I would like to do is also revisit some of the vegetation here. So we're going to fill out some of this area a little bit more. Along this coastline, and then I also need to give some of the treatment for like sand, and maybe we need to add a few rocks in here. Just going to make this look a little bit kind of worn. We also have this last little water treatment plant here, or pump rather. Let's go ahead and take out trees out of this road. And I think I'm going to immediately go ahead and switch this over to like just a 2-lane. Yeah, something along those lines. We don't really need the grass and sidewalk and all like we had for a lot of the residential inside the town. Okay. And since we've removed all our industrial back here, I think what we're going to do is we're going to use that rural road, this little 2-lane country road, and I'm just going to do a couple of streets here that break off for just a little bit more residential. I'm also going to make sure these are kind of level with this. And they were not. So let's tweak the height a little bit. And then I want to smooth that out some. Since we're going kind of uphill, we're going to keep it right down here in the valley. And then I'll fill in some trees so you don't see that crease as much. You can go ahead and do that. A little house there, maybe. Houses here. That's all. Just a few more little spots for a few places. We have these out here. I kind of want to replace these, but I don't know if I'm going to worry about it too much. At least we're being considerate of the environment. I'm going to let those develop. Let's go ahead and get some trees back here behind it. Well, I used too many trees. I realize that. But I just want to frame some of this up. That looks much better than having the industrial there, I think. So then we just have this kind of dead end right now. So what I'm going to do, I think, is just trim up the road a little bit until I decide on something to add here or to build out, which may require more work to the highway infrastructure and stuff. This is just going to be left as something like super simple. I don't really like roads ending like that, but I just don't know what I want to put on that side. So if you have suggestions, leave it in the comments. I feel like you could build out like another neighborhood back there. I don't know how much I want on the other side, though. Again, given that it's in the mountains, and this could obviously be like some like more mountain-based houses, like overlooking the town, even, which would be kind of cool. But not too stressed about it. I think my focus for today was really reworking the marsh and just adding in a few kind of rural houses around, just to give some a little bit of like infrastructure. So this just didn't look as isolated. So there's something around, and obviously the highway interchange rework was pretty critical because that was something I think pretty much everybody agreed upon. Well, guys, I think that about wraps our episode for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the deeper dive into detailing the marsh and the surrounding areas around the town. I wanted to focus on that area, and when you start getting on a project like that and you're enjoying yourself, that's kind of what happened to me. I just kept going. So I think we developed a really cool sort of transformation of that part of the town, and made some cool updates. So I hope you guys had fun and enjoyed. If you did, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment with any suggestions down below. Come check us out at twitch.tv/Slay3K, and we'll catch you next time.